Howdy, y'all, and I am Paul Thompson. Welcome to the dog days of summer for my Project Hell, where for the next 20 minutes or so, Kelly and I are going to throw out all that corporate lingo and talk some real no-nonsense project management and hopefully give plain solutions to real project problems.
And I'm Kelly Schockler, and today we've got a couple things for you. We've got our hot topic, where we'll share some useful best practices to help apply to your own project management practices. And then today we're going to head into our coach's corner with a guest project manager, where we're going to partner together to find solutions for their project hell. Now, some of you are live with us today, and if that's you, thanks for being here. We encourage you to use the chat feature in the Zoom webinar window and share your own experience or encouragement. Chime in anytime. Paul and I like that. And then maybe you're tuning in our YouTube channel and rewatching a video that we've done in the past. And if that's you, you're welcome to drop us an email with any questions at myprojecthell@gmail.com. So with that, Paul, what do we have for today's hot topic?
That's right. Today's hot topic is the art of delegation. So let's start out with what the heck is delegation, right?
Right.
And in my mind, it's a contract, right? It's the contract on sharing authority, responsibility, and accountability between two people. So let's unpack that a little bit, right? Because you're going to delegate something. The authority is you're delegating the right to make the decision or take action to somebody. Responsibility is you're delegating them that obligation. They have to make that decision for you or take that action. And finally, probably one of the more difficult ones is accountability, right? They have to own the answer to the results of what that decision, what that action was. So that's what I mean when I talk about delegating tasks. It's sort of handing over the contract for all those things.
Well, I'm glad you defined that. Thank you, because I think that sets us up to now talk about how. And so my first inclination when we were tossing around this hot topic was to go for the easy grab. What does good delegation look like? And we're going to get there, but I wanted to start with an example of what bad delegation looks like. And I have my husband to think for that line of thinking, because when I was talking to him, he's in a management role. I was talking to him about what makes for good delegation. He immediately recalled the number one delegation rule he was taught in the Coast Guard and modeled by a few managers he had in the Coast Guard, and that was delegate and then disappear. So it was a tongue-in-cheek joke that the guys had about that style, but it's definitely a real phenomenon. The manager would dump all the work on the team and then disappear. Great for the manager, but not so great for the team, right? So I said, well, how did you feel about that? He's like, well, felt abandoned. We felt resentful because we were perceiving that management was taking advantage of their position and then leaving. So moral of that story is the manager, whoever's leading, the project manager, has to have some semblance of engagement on the tasks and activities. Otherwise, there's damage, there's collateral damage to the team or the individual trust level and morale, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen project managers who operate this way. It's over delegation of the work. They pass off all the tasks to the team, maybe the project coordinator or the project assistant, and then they're off doing who knows what, right? So, and then they wonder, why is the team so resentful and they're not working well together? So an example of how not to, and then we have the flip side, that concept that you're talking about, the art of delegating. What does good, healthy delegation look like? And how do you get out of that? I can do it myself better and faster.
Right.
That foxhole that we find ourselves in as PMs.
Right. Because remember, our primary role and responsibility is to make sure things get done, not necessarily do it all ourselves. Right.
Right.
So you can't delegate everything, but what can you delegate? A couple of things I always look to do: routine tasks, right? And those should be easy to delegate. Also, tasks that I dislike, but it's finding someone who will find those tasks fun or use it to learn, right? I've done a million status reports. It's not fun for me. A new coordinator doing a status report is learning, is getting that art of finding their voice so she can create her status reports to reflect her style. So it's an opportunity there. Couple of things. What would you say you don't delegate out? Anything there?
Oh, I think, strategy and,
Great.
critical problem solving, high risk issues.
Mhm.
Maybe collaboration for sure, but to completely delegate it, you're talking about, you would have to have 100% trust that that person or that resource will be handling it, right? And I
Right.
think that's the biggest challenge as a project manager when you have an inexperienced team or resource. There is a little bit of letting go you've got to do to
Mhm.
allow that room for experimentation, for them to do things that maybe are not the way you do it, like you've mentioned. And it's less about the process and more about the allowing them to experiment.
Right. Right. Yeah. In my mind, good delegation is about being clear, right? Give the person enough of the big picture so they know how their task that they're receiving fits into everything, but also then give them all the details on what, when, where, how, and any limits so they can deliver to your expectations. Delegation, as you pointed out, right? It should be collaborative, not a forced dump and go. So you definitely should, they should see this as an assignment for an opportunity, not, well, there goes the lieutenant out for, whatever.
Well, delegation, it's hard. As someone who's a self-admitted high overachiever end of the spectrum, I can fall into that. Well, I can do it better and faster myself. So it's about learning to delegate gracefully, let go of the how, and allow others to be creative and autonomous in the way they execute. And that's an art, but it's a
Mhm.
powerful tool to help you build up your project team and free you up to focus on running the project. So that's our art of delegation hot topic. And let's move on to our coach's corner because we only have 20 minutes. We're going to spend a little time here in this episode troubleshooting our guest project manager, John's project hell. So, John, welcome to My Project Hell. John's an IT project management consultant. Thanks for joining us today, John.
Hey,
Absolutely.
John.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what's going on with your project hell today.
So I have a project that involves some critical infrastructure, and I have a manager that seems resistant to approved changes, including like limiting his resources and even filing exceptions to stop approved changes that have already gone through CAB. So he has a kind of a death grip on his environment, which I understand. It's critical infrastructure, but we have clearly defined run books with all the steps in place that he's approved, but it still seems like he's not really buying into the program as a whole.
Okay, and a little bit about the culture where you're at. Are they open generally to discussing issues, or is it more
They
he,
generally
them?
are, except that this section or this environment has never been really touched by outside hands. And I think that's a lot where it comes from, is that there's some concern and some just reticence in allowing outsiders to come in and mess with an environment that they could have issues with.
Sure,
So
understandable.
they're not happy with delegating out some responsibility.
Correct.
That's
Good tie-in, Paul.
That's what I'm here for.
So, John, what briefly a few things you might have done so far. How has that gone? Is there anything that you've already tried to put into place or do
Yes.
to
So
address this?
we've had calls with the manager, and and re-gone over the run books and have gotten even buy-in from his own team members to who he doesn't really want involved, but they're more than happy to do their tasks. And even they are, helping to us to advocate to him to get the work done. And the other thing we've done is we've gone to the leadership, escalated up and said, hey, you guys have told us that this is an approved program. We need you to message that down to your managers, because some of the managers aren't getting the messaging. So that's kind of the steps that we've taken.
Okay, so but is there a specific one manager in particular, or there's a couple?
Just one specific
Just one.
manager.
Okay. Paul,
Hmm.
I'll let you have the first crack.
Well, it sounds like you guys have made some really good first attempts, right? You've talked to senior leadership, trying to get that. And I'm going to assume that you've put it into a message that says, this is what it's holding back. This is the impact of these things. So it's starting to put dollars, time, and costs to this roadblock, because that's all it is, right? It's
Correct.
a road. One of the things that I've done in the past that has worked well in this kind of scenario where, again, not wanting to delegate outside, it sounds like this person's team, right? They're very comfortable doing it, the work themselves, but he trusts this team. He built this team, maybe. It's been years with these people, so he's good. What we've done is set it up almost as like proof of concept where, okay, we're going to have your team follow our steps. We're going to be on the call with them. We're going to be sitting side by side with them, whatever it takes, but they're doing it. We're learning, right? And we're going to run through that a couple of times. And then we're going to talk to you about the results, any lessons learned, any improvements until you're comfortable that these steps work great for your team. Then shift it over to, okay, now our team's going to execute it, but your team's going to be right there sitting next to us and approving each step, right? They're going to be surfing over the keyboard, and let them do that a couple of times, right? So that, in case anything goes wrong, your guy is right there to pull our hands back from the keyboard or to take over anything, and you'll be set. And you do that a couple of times. And then you sort of started to set the expectation, right? Was there anything that needs to be there that your team now sees that they knew in their head that was never in there? And you get that added and you run it through. But ultimately, you're going to get it to the point at which, everybody's just sitting there going, why is two people doing what one person can do and does every time? It's a bit painful. So I only recommend this kind of, activity if you're dealing with something that's going to be repetitive, right? It's going to become basically you're operationalizing a part of the project, and you just got to kind of baby step them through it. Hopefully that can happen in a relatively short time because you do have a lot of cycles. So
Correct.
That would be where I would start, and I'm going to stop.
Any response to what Paul's just shared, John?
No, the white glove treatment is a viable way to do it. There are certain managers that just kind of require that.
Yeah, this is a tough situation because, and I think at the heart of resistance to change is fear. It's fear of losing control, something the manager wants to maintain, and it's never really logical. What do you see any specifics there?
Yeah, definitely the control is a big trigger for this person, because even when we push changes into the cab through their change control system, if he's not involved in the approval of that before it gets even to the cab stage, he's raised that red flag and say, hey, this got into cab and it didn't come onto my desk. And that's an issue with their own automated procedures, their own automated system that didn't didn't send it to him as an approved manager, but he definitely has some control issues when it comes to his environment.
Well, so it's time maybe for a difficult conversation, which triggers a dilemma for you, right? I have to bring this up. This feels difficult to talk about the elephant in the room. I need to share something so that this manager can know how the work is getting impacted. And then maybe you'd be trying to figure out what are the magic words so that I can control the outcome and not jeopardize this relationship to get what I want. But we can't control the outcome for this, right? I mean, you can only do what you can do. There aren't any magic words to make sure that that manager is going to respond well and agree with you and get on the bus and validate that you're right. So with that in mind, I think that I would try to have a one-to-one conversation. I don't know how possible that is. You mentioned team conversations that have been had and escalating upward, but while this is daunting and intimidating approach, I think this tough conversation with this manager is critical. So, and practicing before, outlining your talking points, your questions, and really would be about asking clarity on the current direction, understanding what their point of view is, right? Why they might be, have them say to you and articulate why they are doing these certain actions so that you can understand where they're coming from, because that's going to be at the core, in my opinion, of finding a solution for this issue. And then you can lay it out. Here's what we're doing. And you probably might have already done this at a bigger level. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we need to be successful. And here are the impacts that are going to be happening if this doesn't change, to Paul's point about putting that into metrics and numbers. But I think the bigger question might be, John, is what's your plan if this person doesn't change and get on board with what's happening? Because you're doing a great job, you're representing well. This is a risk, right? So what's the mitigation strategy? Where's the inflection point when it's unsustainable and you can't get the project over the finish line? Then what? And that's where
exactly
I go.
it. So, it's when it gets added to the RAID log, and it becomes reported to the entire program, then it's not just, then everyone knows, and then the program is at risk. And you don't really want to do that. So I definitely like the idea of the one-on-one before that point. And that we haven't done that yet, which is, sitting down and trying to understand what his concerns are from a personal perspective. And maybe it's just a personality conflict, maybe it's just he doesn't trust us.
Yeah.
And he has no reason to, because we haven't given him a reason to. We haven't broken anything, but we also haven't engaged with him on a personal level and built that relationship. So maybe that's a great way to do that before it has to get escalated to a program level.
Oh, yes, definitely have a one-on-one with them before it goes there. That's just respectful, right? And honoring of their position.
And when you do, use kind of an accusation audit. And by that, I mean, bring up all the things that you think he's worried about, right? I know you're worried we're going to break this device. I know it seems like we don't know what we're doing. I know, right? Just figure out what are all the objections and put them out there, because that'll start to help the conversation in that you're trying to articulate what he's got problems with you guys, right? And
very good idea.
It sometimes opens up the conversation because now they see you as recognizing their concerns.
Correct.
So you've got that. You've got full kind of doing that one-on-one. You've got the RAID log. Think about how to maybe white glove it, but I think you've got a couple of ideas on how to step forward next without running out and calling the sky is falling.
Or pulling the fire alarm, yeah.
Right. In case of emergency, break glass, but not quite yet.
Not quite yet. Yeah. I think there's still some good options, and I appreciate you guys' input and allowing me to, ask the question and get some advice.
Glad we could help.
Yeah, thanks for being on the the show today. We appreciate your time and sharing with our audience your issues so that they can learn too. So it's already been 20 minutes. Time to move on and let everyone get back to their projects. So thank you again, John, for joining us, and all those PMs who joined us live today. You can find us again on our YouTube channel and give other episodes a listen. And we've got a post-show email coming your way if you registered, and you'll find details on connecting with Paul and I for a free problem-solving session if you have a Project Hell issue you'd like to discuss in private.
That's right. And I hope everyone did enjoy the show as much as Kelly and I enjoyed bringing it to you. Please join us next time for another hot topic. And if you'd like to participate in Coach's Corner, drop us an email at myprojecthell@gmail.com. We're always on the lookout for project managers who want to kind of help themselves get out of the hole that's been dug for them. All right. And don't forget, you're going to get that post-show email. Please follow the link to the survey. I encourage you to fill it out. It's our lessons learned and your opportunity to help us get better each time.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.